NVIDIA is up 200% over the last year, and it's up 165% year to date, while the S&P 500 is only up 25% over the last year, and it's up 15% year to date. So NVIDIA obviously has been killing it recently, and they recently reported their earnings results for the first quarter of their fiscal year 2025 earnings results. So I'm going to talk about that in this video, and then also talk a little bit about their business model, some of the recent news that came out surrounding NVIDIA, and then also look at their financial statements and calculate the intrinsic value per share for NVIDIA. So right here, we can see their income statement for the first quarter of 2025, or the fiscal year 2025. And we can see they had net earnings of about $14.8 billion, which is up 628% from only about $2 billion. A massive increase, obviously. And then we can also see their revenue increased from about $7 billion for the quarter ended April 30th, 2023 to $26 billion in 2024. That's an increase of about 262%. And if we go to page 5 here, we can see in their balance sheet that their shareholders' equity has increased while their additional paid-in capital line item has decreased, which basically means that their equity increased and their return on equity increased, but the average amount of shares that they have issued decreased because they've been buying back shares pretty aggressively. And we can see that even more so when we go to page 7 and look at the financing section of their cash flow statement. We can see all of the cash that they've been returning back to shareholders recently through repurchases of common stock, about $7.7 billion in the first quarter of the year, compared to $0 of repurchased common stock in the first quarter of last year, with dividends paid being about the same. So this is obviously very good news for investors of NVIDIA. Not only is the stock growing as a result of the increasing demand for AI, but also as a result of their aggressive share buyback program, which has increased their return on equity. And just to touch on that a little bit more in detail, the industry demand for AI is a long-term catalyst for NVIDIA. NVIDIA's strong market position and competitive advantages in AI and GPU technology continue to attract investor interest, and the fastest growing segment of NVIDIA's business is its data center division, which is driven primarily by the increasing demand for artificial intelligence and machine learning capabilities for products on the AI market. Also, NVIDIA's Drive platform offers AI computing for autonomous vehicles, which includes both hardware through their NVIDIA Drive AGX, and then also software solutions to enable self-driving capabilities, vehicle safety systems, and in-car AI assistance, with Tesla being one of their biggest customers. NVIDIA's stock obviously has been recently experiencing significant activity and positive outlooks as well. The company's shares have been on a strong upward trajectory, with Bank of America predicting a 24% rise in the next 12 months, setting a price target of $150 per share, with NVIDIA currently trading at around $130 per share. NVIDIA's stock also saw a boost following its 10-for-1 stock split on June 7th, 2024, which was about 10 days ago. And that obviously made shares more accessible to a broader range of investors. And this move is expected to further drive the stock's growth as it attracts smaller retail investors. In addition, NVIDIA is targeting substantial free cash flow generation, aiming for $100 billion over the next 2 years. And this strong cash flow will end up supporting new growth initiatives and potential acquisitions, further enhancing the company's market position and value. So obviously a lot of good news coming out for NVIDIA. Now we can see this discounted cash flow model that I'm using to try to calculate the intrinsic value per share of NVIDIA. We can see that after calculating their historic growth rate for their free cash flows over the last 5 years of about 44%, and then also calculating the weighted average cost of NVIDIA's capital to calculate a discount rate for this DCF model, the intrinsic value per share number that I estimated for NVIDIA was about $83 per share, which means that NVIDIA would be overvalued at the current share price compared to their estimated intrinsic value, but honestly not by as much as I had initially anticipated. Considering their price to earnings ratio is 77 times earnings, the fact that the intrinsic value is estimated at $83 per share, I would say, is actually still pretty impressive for the company, and it could mean that even at the current share price, given that a lot of growth for NVIDIA could end up happening in the future as a result of those long-term catalysts that I had just previously mentioned, their share price could be justified as NVIDIA's intrinsic value ends up catching up to their current share price and then growing beyond that. But it is a lot to ask for a company whose market capitalization has increased so much in such a short period of time to over $3 trillion now. For them to double their value from where they are now, they would have to have a market cap of around $7 trillion, which would make them the most valuable company of all time. So if it is possible, it would be pretty record-breaking, but I think it is a lot to ask for NVIDIA and anyone who's looking to invest in NVIDIA and get as large a return as investors have gotten over the last year and over the last 5 years. Now we can see this industry analysis I did to compare NVIDIA to some of the other competitors in this industry, Broadcom and Qualcomm. We can see compared to those two, NVIDIA is beating them across the board in terms of profit margins, return on assets, and return on equity. They also have a lower debt to equity ratio, meaning they're less leveraged than Broadcom and Qualcomm. They have the highest PE ratio, which is probably to be expected because investors are pricing in a lot more growth for NVIDIA than the other two companies. We can also see they have the lowest dividend yield and the highest price to cash flow ratio. So based on this, it looks like you probably want to give it to NVIDIA as the most dominant player in the market right now, which is to be expected. Lastly, I wanted to compare NVIDIA to some of the other companies I've looked at in previous videos. In terms of intrinsic value, we saw from the DCF model that NVIDIA wasn't trading below intrinsic value per share, but they did present a really good intrinsic value per share, all things considered. I thought they would be way more overvalued than I estimated them to be. So that's pretty good news for anyone who's invested in NVIDIA. We can see that for cash flow growth rate over the last 5 years, NVIDIA comes in first with 44%. They don't have a very good dividend yield, so they don't make it onto the top 10 dividend yield table. For gross profitability, NVIDIA has a 72% gross profit margin and a 48% net profit margin, putting them in the top 5 of both profit margin tables. And then we can see that for the first quarter of 2024 year-over-year revenue and earnings growth, NVIDIA comes in first place compared to the other companies we've looked at, Supermicro, Broadcom, Google, and Tesla. We can see they also came in first place on the fourth quarter table, or third place for earnings, but first place for revenue. They came in first place on Q3 2023 and Q2 2023. So they've been coming in first place, beating out all of the other companies we've been looking at quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. It's no surprise NVIDIA is obviously doing one of the best, if not the best, in the market right now, especially at such a large market capitalization. Then lastly, I wanted to compare them based on stock performance over the last 5 years. NVIDIA is up 3,400%, which puts them ahead of every single company that we've looked at. So they're beating out all of the companies we've looked at based on stock performance. They're beating them out based on financial statement performance, based on profitability, based on historic free cash flow growth rate, and they're also one of the best players in their industry. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of NVIDIA. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see everyone in the next one.